So let's look at what we've got here, because I want you to be able to do this for any sized hat. Again, mine is the average medium size hat, but this idea or formula should work for any size that you've got when we're going to work on the brim here. So let's just kind of create our shape here of our hat. So it's a circle, right? And so what we've got here at the back is this little opening. Okay. Now for my circumference without the tails, so our tails are kind of getting worked out there, I had 90 stitches. Okay. And the last time we did an increase on the crown of the hat, we increased into every 14th stitch. So now that we're going to resume increasing again to create a flare, we are now going to increase into every 15th stitch. Okay, so that's where we're going to put our increases. So what I want to do is I want to take 90 stitches, I'm going to divide it by 15. So 90 divided by 15, so into every 15th stitch, we're going to increase. So that's going to give me a total number of increases of 6. So I know that 6 times throughout that circle, I'm going to place an increase. Now, because we have an opening here, I'm going to be a little bit more strategic about where I'm going to place that increases. So most people would just go, okay, I'm going to start from here. I'm going to count 15, increase, 15, increase, 15, increase all the way around. The only thing I don't like about that is at one end, there's going to be increase here and then an increase there. So I want to even mine out a little bit more. So I know that my number is 6. So let's just divide our hat in half here for a moment. So this is the back part of our hat, and that is the center front. Okay, so if we have 6 increases, we know essentially we want to do 3 on one side and 3 on the other. So I want to kind of roughly have an increase there. So make them nice and even. So on the left side of my hat and on the right side, and then maybe one kind of on the center here, and then maybe one towards the back. I'm just losing ink here. There we go. Okay. So in total, I have 6 spots where I want to increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that way the back increases are nice and balanced on each side, the side and the front. So if we take 90 and divide that by 2, so let's do 90 stitches divided by 2 is 45 stitches. So that means on this side of the hat, I should have 45 stitches, and on this side of the hat, I should have 45 stitches. So we know that 45 divided by 15 equals 3, and therefore we have 3 increases. So I know you're thinking, what's up with all this math? Where are we going with this? So it's just to give you an idea of how I'm thinking about this. So I'm going to place 15 and 15 stitches in these 2 middle areas. So that's fine. So from this increase here to this one is an increase, to that one is an increase. It's 15 stitches. So I'm going to replicate that on this side. So 15 and 15. But 15 and 15 is only 30. So we know that we have 15 more stitches to fill in here. So I've got this gap and this gap. So what I want to do is I've decided I am going to increase into the 8th stitch from the base of the back. So this is where the base begins. So I will increase into the 8th stitch, then I'll do 15, then I'll do 15, and up here I'm going to have 7 stitches. Now it doesn't mean I'm going to increase here. It's just so that we have an even number of stitches on this side, and then we're going to replicate it on this side. So if I have 7 here, then I'm going to replicate that here. So I know that this is basically the front portion of my hat. I know that there's going to be 14 stitches from here to here by the time I increase. But then I continue and I do 15 again, increase, 15 again, increase, and there should be 8 stitches left here before I get to the end here, okay? So 6 increases in total. And these stitches have been dispersed so that the hat is nice and balanced in where the increases are, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So I'm just gonna circle these here. Okay, and so that's how we're going to proceed to place our increases. Now, obviously the number of stitches are going to vary depending on how many stitches you end up with your circumference. But let's say, for example, just to kind of work out a little different example here. Let's say that your stitch count was 60 stitches at the end, okay? And let's say the last time you increased was into every 9th stitch. So let's say you're making this hat for a child, let's say, or a young adult. We now know that when we start to flare, we want to now increase into every 10th stitch. So 60 stitches divided by 10, actually funny enough, gives you 6 increases. So you see, you would actually follow the same method here. So you'd have 6 spots just like me. But the difference is it's the number of stitches would change. So for you, your hat, and I know I'm going into a bit extra depth here, but I really want it to make it adjustable for any hat size. So half of 60 is 30. So we know we need 30 stitches on this side and 30 stitches on that side. So if we were to divvy this up, just like we did on the other one, okay, so that's the front. This is the back area. You know that you have 10, 10, and 10, 10, 10, and 10, okay? So right away, we would put 10 and 10 here, right? So that gives us 20. So we're going to replicate it on the other side, 10 and 10. Now, in order to make up, so remember, we're only looking at half of the hat. In order to make up our number of 30, we still need 10. Now we're going to divide that number between the front and the back. So I would put 5 here and 5 here, okay? So that's going to give us our 30. And then you would do the same thing on this side and the same thing, whoops, and the same thing there. Now remember, this little line here, there's no increase here. It's just to show you that it's splitting in half. So you would start your half by stitching 5, then increase, and then you would just stitch 10, increase, stitch 10, increase, and actually stitch 10 and increase because 5 plus 5 is 10. So in this case, your numbers are going to be a lot easier. And then again, you stitch 10, and then you would have 5 left over. So it would work out nice and even. So I hope that this whole point of me explaining this to you will make it a little bit easier for you to kind of plan where you're going to place your increases as you begin your brim. And mostly it's simply because we've got these tails here that we're dealing with. If this were closed, it would be a lot more straightforward. You wouldn't have to worry too much about how to divvy up these stitches. But hopefully this will help you out, and make sure to kind of, and I have a timestamp for this little section. So if you don't need it, you can kind of skip over it. But if you need to refer to this a few times, please do so. And just keep coming back to the timestamp as you work out your brim. So let's get started on actually stitching this up. Okay, so it's now time to go back to increases to create the brim. And what you want to do is you want to kind of delineate what is going to be the tails that we've started here. And we know that it's 40 stitches, but what we want to do is take your stitch markers and mark the 40th stitch on each side. So that way we can remember that the tails will not get any increases. So the brim is basically going to flare out along the rest of the circumference, except once you get to the tails. So I've marked mine. So now what I'm going to do, so notice I did not fasten off. I'm just going to work my way back. So I've come to the end here. I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and I'm going to work my way back. So it's just 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way across. So it's nothing crazy. And then once we get to the marker, this is where we're going to start paying attention to our stitch count so we can begin our increases. So I'm just going to quickly do this and I'll meet you guys at that marker in a moment. So here I am at the stitch marker. So I'm just going to place, actually, let me just take that out. So I'm going to place my last single crochet. So I know this is my 40th stitch. And so I'm going to replace my stitch marker, always on that 40th stitch. Okay, so now we're officially on the brim. And so based on that little diagram that we started, we know the first set of increases will happen in the 8th stitch. So we're going to continue on here. We're going to single crochet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the 8th stitch and this is where we're going to increase. So we place 2 single crochets here. Okay. And so this is technically our first row of our brim, but from the top to the bottom, just as a reminder, we are working on round number 32. So now we've done our first increase. But now what we're going to do is the next increase is going to be into the 15th stitch. So from here, we're then going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Here is the 15th stitch. So this is where we're going to place the increase of 2 single crochets. Okay. We're now going to go and do the next increase into the next set of 15. Okay, so we have, again, I'm going to do that 15 stitches, or 14, I should say, and then into the 15th stitch, we're going to increase. This is the 14th, and now I'm at my 15th stitch again. So I will place an increase here. So 1 and 2. Okay, so we've worked our way almost to the center front of the hat. So if I bring back our original diagram here, so we did 8 and we increased, we did 15 and we increased, and we did another 15, or another increase into the 15th stitch. So if we're looking at this side of the hat, we should have 7 more stitches, and that'll complete half of the hat. But we're not doing an increase here. We're doing the next increase after the other 7. So technically, we're going to do 14 stitches, or we're going to increase into the 14th stitch. Okay, so this time I'm going to count 13, and then in the 14th, I will increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and this is the 14th stitch. So I will place an increase here. Okay, so now we've gotten around to the first half, we're into the second half, and so now we're going to go back to doing 2 sets of 15. So I'm going to do 14 stitches in the 15th, I'm going to increase, 14 stitches in the 15th, I'm going to increase, and then these last 8 just get worked right back up to that stitch marker. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then once I get to the stitch marker, I just work 1 single crochet all the way to the end. So that is going to complete the first round of your brim and the tail. Okay, now you're probably not going to notice anything crazy happening just yet because we're working single crochets, and single crochet increases are pretty subtle. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put up a little graphic on the screen that you can refer to because it's all single crochets. So it's just a matter of knowing where to place your increases. And so with every round of my brim, I'm going to indicate where I'm going to place the increases, because what's going to happen is the more rows you work, because we are working in rows now, the number of stitches between your increases will increase. So this graphic will just be a nice little guide that you can just press pause between every row, and it will tell you where to place the next increase for row 33, for example, and then row 34, 35, etc., until we get the desired width of the brim. Okay, so that's probably going to take you a little while. So you're most likely going to press pause, maybe come back and forth to this video. And so once the brim is flaring out, so once you see the brim flaring out, then you definitely know you're on the right track. And our tail will also get thick as you go along. So it's going to look a little funny for a while, but don't panic. Just trust the process, I should say. So once we've done the full brim, then I'm going to come back and show you what it looks like. And then we're just about finished the hat, and then I'll show you what's going to happen with these tails here. So it'll probably be a little while before I see you again. So happy crocheting, good luck, and make sure to keep referencing to this graphic that I'll be putting up here on the screen. Okay, so I have completed a total of 41 rows now that we're working in rows, and I'm pretty happy with the way the brim is sitting. I did try it on, and it definitely gives me some coverage. Now, as you do your increases along the way, you're going to notice that your brim is going to have some little pointed sections, and that's simply because a lot of times you come back and you place increases on top of previous increases. So what happens is your work starts to remember it as points. Now, as I explained just a little while ago, because we're turning our work back and forth, because now we've been working in rows, this does kind of smooth out a little bit, because then you'll find that the increases do start to shift a little bit. And so that's why at the end of your row, sometimes you won't have the number of stitches remaining in the original count. It's just simply because we've been flipping it back and forth. So it's neither here nor there. It's totally fine. So once you've reached your brim depth, and mine, if I measure it, is about 3.5 inches or about 9 centimeters. And you can try this on, see if you like it. Some people like a wider brim. Now, also at this point, before we do the next little final round here, this may be a good time if you wanted to put in some crafting wire here. You can crochet over it, and that will give your hat a little bit more of a stiffer kind of stability for the brim to stick out. I generally don't do this with my crochet sun hats because I like the portability of them. See, I like the fact that you can kind of fold them and stick them in a bag or a suitcase, and then when you take them out, the integrity is still there. Once you start putting wire in here, you can bend it, of course, but it just doesn't start looking the same after a few times of doing that. So it's just a personal preference. If you would like, you can. I'm not going to, and I'm pretty fine with the way the structure of the hat is. For me, it's stiff enough that it does sit up for me. It shades my eyes and I can still see, so it doesn't flop over in front. And that's the thing I love about using cotton yarn and using 2 strands together. Okay, so just a couple of tips there on how you can customize it to your liking. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a final round, and you've got these 2 thick tails here in the back, which is what we wanted. And so I'm going to come back up here doing my usual single crochets, but now once we hit the brim, see my stitch markers are still in. I want to try and find a way of just smoothing this out. And so I'm going to add a really easy little kind of chains and slip stitch border just to give it a little bit of interest, but also to camouflage these little points here. So let's get to it. Okay, so this is my round 41 that I've just completed. So I'm going to go on to round 42, and these first 40 stitches are the same. I just chain 1 and turn my work. And I'm actually really happy with the way this gray and white work together. I think it'll be great on some really hot sunny days. It'll deflect the sun. It'll be great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to work my 40 single crochets back up to that stitch marker, just as usual. And then from there, I'll show you guys the very little subtle detail I'm going to do to create a nice little finished edge there. Okay, so I've just finished my 40 single crochets coming up here. And now we're going to work around the brim just to try and camouflage these little points here. So something really nice and simple. What we're going to do is we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, then we're going to skip the next stitch, and into the following stitch we're going to slip stitch. So it just creates this little kind of eyelet here, and then we chain 2, 1, 2, skip the next stitch and slip stitch. So it's nothing fancy. It's just going to create a little bit of a detail that perhaps will camouflage those little pointed spots, especially because it can be a little bit busy here with this little scallop. So I'm going to just do a few of these. So you're always skipping one and then slip stitching after you do your chain 2, skip 1 and slip stitch. Really super easy. Okay, so when we take that out, so it's not a big deal if your eyelets are not really kind of showing through. The point is more to create, see how it creates just a little bit of a little scalloping. So the idea is the busyness of this will take away from that pointedness. And then that's it. So it just creates a nice little finished edge. We're going to go all the way around. When you get to that stitch marker here, then we will just do the single crochets as usual. You'll get to the end and you'll fasten off. And yes, so once you get to the end, you can then fasten off and weave in your tail. And once you've done that, the basic structure of the hat is complete. And then we've got to talk about how we are going to fasten this into a little bow at the end here. So I'm going to finish my final round, which will be round number 42. Then I'll meet back up with you to work on the back embellishment. Okay guys, so I have completed row 42 and I've snipped my yarn. So you can see it just gives it a very subtle little, very tiny little scalloped edge. And I'm really happy with how it came out. So it's just kind of, so you can still see a little bit where it wants to point, but hey, this is a sun hat. So I'm pretty happy with how that came out. And these are our tails now at the end. And you can see I've kind of pinched them in already. I just took some stitch markers here and just kind of worked our way out there. But this is basically it. So now we're in the final stretch. We've got our tails in the back. And all we've got to do now is shape that bow. And I'm not going to lie, it can be just challenging to kind of hold it all together. So this is why I cinched it in with the stitch markers here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to sew these little edges together. So we want it to turn up. So as you can see here, I just secured it with the stitch marker. Okay. So I pinched the two sides in here. I'm going to sew these together, and I'm going to do that on both sides. This will help to hold that down while we kind of place our bow where we want it to sit. Okay, so this will take care of one of those things there. So I'm just going to take the stitch marker out. And just to show you, all I did, where are we here? So I just found the last stitch. So here is where we did those little scallops, and I just found that last stitch there before we start doing regular single crochets, inserted my stitch marker, and then I went all the way back to row number 27. Actually, I think this is row 28, where we did our last set of V's, and to the very top, what would be the very top of that stitch, of that V stitch there, I'm just inserting my stitch marker. So I'm just showing you guys because that is the location of the two stitches that I am going to be pinching together. So that's what you want to do. So placing the stitch marker there is great to kind of keep it in place. And then you just want to grab a little bit of yarn. I'm going to take some of this gray that I've been using, and I am going to just take a nice long piece, and then I'm going to thread my yarn needle. And the idea here is just to sew these two sides together. So I'm going to actually start at the top of this V-stitch. So see how that's a V-stitch there? So I'm just going to start by inserting my needle there and pulling through. I don't want to go all the way through. You can secure it actually here if you want, which is probably what I'm going to do. I promise, guys, this whole long process will be worth it. A lot of moving parts here on this hat. Okay, so once I've secured it there, now I'm going to find that very first stitch so I can actually see that's where my scallop began. So I'm just going to insert my needle into the top of that stitch and pull it through. And you can see that naturally it will pinch that in. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a couple little whip stitches here. And I'm just going to go back in through that first stitch, just like that, and then back into the second stitch. Okay, so you're just going to keep going around and around. You know, 4 or 5 times should be plenty. I like to do more rather than less, just because I like to make sure that my work is sitting nice and secure. And this doesn't have to be too pretty because the bow part is going to be hiding this anyway. So once you've come around enough times, you're then going to grab your original tail and you're just going to make a knot. In fact, I'm going to do a couple of knots to secure that. Okay. And then once you feel that it's secure, you're just going to snip your yarn, and you can snip it nice and close, just like that. And so now you've already started the base shape of your bow. So you're going to do that on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and do my second side, and then I will come back and show you what we're going to do from here. Okay, so I've got these two sides secured nicely. So it just creates a little flip up at the back so you can kind of see where the shape is going. So this is where we need a little bit of patience. So what you're going to do is you're going to just kind of fold the right flap, put your hand underneath and just fold it over that way. So you've got this little dip in the back and you're folding it, and it's just going to sit nicely off to the right. You're going to do the same thing with the left side, and you're going to fold it off to the left. Okay, so you just kind of have these two folds. Now what you want to try and do is manipulate it so that these little tails actually will look like they're crisscrossing here. So they kind of sit out a little bit. It's kind of what I found looked nice and pretty. So the whole time keeping a bend here, but you're just going to adjust the length here. So this is essentially the base structure of our bow. And then what you want to do is you want to just start pinching it in the center. Okay, so I just kind of take my index fingers and my thumbs and I just pinch in the center just so I can see kind of where that center point is, where I really like it, which is great. And then I'm going to take that edge and bring it up, and take this edge and bring that up. So that creates a little bit of a nice texture. You can see the little end of the bow. Now it's not done yet. You're just kind of playing with it to see how you like it. Now it's quite thick here right now, so if I lift that up, that's what you've got. And it's going to be wonky because we haven't attached it fully to the hat yet. First thing we want to do is we want to secure this little point here where we're happy where the crisscross is happening. And don't worry about this little tail here. We're going to manipulate it a little bit later on, okay? So for me, I think I'm pretty happy with it sitting there. So I'm just going to leave it there. And this is where you're going to want to grab another long piece. I would even say maybe make it like 24 inches, 36 inches, something like that. We're going to do lots of wrapping here. So what we want to do is I'm going to thread my yarn needle again. And you can see where I had kind of pinched it with my fingers. I just want to kind of grab that first spot where I pinched, and I want to insert my needle, try to make my way all the way to where my forefinger is. Don't puncture your finger, and come out through there. So you can already see there's a lot of layers there. It's kind of thick. Let me just turn it down this way. Okay, but this is where it's just kind of securing the center spot that we want here. Okay. And then what I want to do, just going to pull that tail a little bit, is I'm going to go back in that same spot and come out in the same spot, just to kind of form a ring around it, so to speak, with the yarn. So I'm going to pull that through. So you can see now that we can just take these two ends and kind of pull tight, which is perfect. So that's kind of anchoring down our center. Now, it's going to blend in. That's part of the plan. So don't worry if you kind of can't see it on camera. We do want that yarn to blend in. Now what I want to do is I want to come back in through the front, but instead of puncturing through, I want to just fold this little bit up and then just wrap it around from the outside. Okay, so I'm just going to bring my yarn underneath, and I've still got my needle going just because it's a little easier to handle it. And now I'm also going to pinch this little outside portion here. Okay, so by pinching it up, it's just going to continue to give your bow some texture, which is what I think looks nice. And now you can just kind of pinch it or pull it tight and snug. And actually, let me get rid of this needle here. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it like 1,000 times. I don't know. I'm not going to count. I'm just going to keep wrapping it to give it a nice thick band around there. Now, if you wanted to, you can probably use something else, like a ribbon if you wanted to do that. But I'm just going to keep this nice and uniform and just use the yarn. This is also mercerized cotton, so it's pretty strong. I can really pull on it. So I'm going to just use this. And you can see there's a little gap here. That's totally normal. And I'm just going to keep wrapping until I get a nice thick band that I'm happy with. So you can see it's starting to form a little band there. Okay, so I have wrapped this probably about 20 times, so it's nice and tight. And so I'm going to bring my long tail to the back now. You can see it looks much more like a bow now. Now just be careful because it looks like I did not keep mine nice and even. So the side slightly looks a little bit larger, but hey, it's a work of art. What are you going to do? Okay, so remember that initial short tail? Let's take that and I'm just going to feed it through. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to push it in through the back, way to the back here, because I want to tie it with that long tail. There we go. Okay, so here's the short tail. This is the long tail. I'm now just going to tie them and knot them. So I want to hide that knot somewhere in the back here. Just like that, and one more knot. I always like doing things in threes. Just like that. And then I'm just going to snip off the shorter one. Okay. And now we're ready to close up this little gap here. So this is where I'm going to get my yarn needle again. And I'm going to just thread that. So the idea is I want to press this center to the edge of the hat. So somewhere around here. And I know it's a little tricky to see. So hopefully that makes sense. So this is my center where the band is, and I want to press it up against this little opening here. And then you can play with it to see how you like the look of it and the placement, right? So there you go. That's the back. You can see how it bends up. And then once you're happy with that, you're going to start sewing it basically to that little opening that we created when we created our V. So I'm going to go in from the top to the bottom. And I'm just going to do that to cinch it closer, just like that, okay? And then I'm just going to always secure it by bringing it through these strands here. So there's a lot going on. It's very bulky. So if you can make it through the strands, you're good. Just like that. And I'm going to do this many, many, many times because I want this to be nice and secure onto the back of the hat. Okay, so I'm going to keep inserting somewhere along the edge here. So anywhere where I see a gap opening, and I will even take an edge of the bow right here, right? Because that way it's not just the center, it's the center and a little bit of the edges. So then I just go again to where this, see how there's a little gap here? I'm always going to insert there and then pick up the edge of the bow on this side and pull through. So it's just whip stitching, and you can already see it's kind of securing nicely. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to try to zoom in. You can see it's already securing nicely to the back of the hat. So we want to close up that gap a little bit. And when you turn it over, right, you've got a lot of gathering here. That's okay. So this is where we initially bent the brim in, and this is the bow. Okay, so my goal first is to secure the center down, and then if you want, you can actually sew this little flap down. I'm not really going to worry about it for me. I'm just going to keep it nice and easy. So for now, look at how cute that looks. So now you can really see the idea behind this. And then later on, you know, you can just manipulate this how you like. That's the beauty of using this cotton yarn with two strands together. Look at how pretty that looks, right? Now, if you want to, you can put a little bit of that crafting wire along the bottom, like I said before, even for the brim. But I'm not going to worry about it because I want this hat to be able to smush itself into my suitcase for my vacation this year. And when I take it out, it's going to be good as gold. So I'm just going to keep sewing this up here, and then our hat is pretty much going to be done finally. Okay, so let me just finish this up, and then I'll show you guys what my hat looks like. All right, guys, here is the hat. So I just wanted to first show it to you, kind of just sitting here, the basic structure of it. So you've got that brim here. You've got some nice breathability through the body. And then around the back, look at how adorable this looks. And I definitely did not center this properly because it's bugging me that this side looks larger than that side. But hey, you can't win them all. But I think it's just super, super cute. The little opening here allows for a nice low ponytail that you can wear with this hat. Or just simply to look cute and adorable. And again, what I love about it, look at this. It just folds up and you can stick it in your bag, and hats like this don't lose their shape. So if you were doing this with a straw hat or one that had a little wire, you do have to be a little bit more ginger with it. And these hats you can just fold up and unfold, and they are perfect for traveling. So if you're going anywhere this summer where you're going to need a nice, fabulous hat, this is definitely a great project for you. And also, actually, maybe even if you want to do this as a gift, would look really, really pretty. And I really love how this sits on my head. It does sit a little bit deeper, but because this is a cotton brim and I don't have any structure to it, I like the fact that it sits deeper on my head, and therefore I can tilt it and I still get a nice amount of shade from the brim. And boy, this one was a labor of love for sure. It took me a bit longer than I thought it would. And it was just simply because we were using single crochet stitches and holding two yarns together. And that's always a little bit harder on my hands. So, but in any case, I just took my time, and here we are. The Sarafina sun hat is complete. Now, I know that you may have a lot of questions with this hat, especially since throughout the tutorial, I kept calling certain rows by different row numbers. For whatever reason, when I picked back up to filming, from here on, I started counting it differently. I did try to make sure that I put some text on the screen there. to correct that. So if you're working on this hat and you're kind of going, what is going on here? I finished row 28, but you keep saying we're done row 26. I'm really sorry about that. But hopefully those corrections make sense. If you need further clarification, please do not hesitate to leave it for me in the comment box down below. And as always, you can email me directly, and you can do that at info@crochetcrafty.com. Don't forget, make sure you attach a photo of your work so that I can have a closer look at what's going on. And by the way, if I don't get to a comment in time and one of you fabulous Stitch friends sees it and is able to help your fellow crocheter, absolutely drop it in the comment box and do that. We're here to help each other and exchange helpful hints and ideas. Okay guys, I am going to thoroughly enjoy my hat this summer, and I hope you do too. It's the month of July. Summer is in full swing, and I'm looking forward to thoroughly enjoying the summer weather. So I hope you have an amazing day today. Happy crocheting, especially if you're working on this hat. Take really good care of yourselves. Remember, don't stay in the heat too long. Stay cool, stay safe, and I will see you guys in next week's session. Bye-bye.